Welcome back to the weekly installment of the Reserve List Top 10. These are the hottest selling cards on the Reserve List this week, February 15th to the 22nd of 2025. And let's be honest, the fact that there are still buyouts going on in the Reserve List this week means we've got a lot to talk about, so let's get started. You're back once again with your host, MTG Moxman, and I'm excited to be here to talk about the Reserve List Top 10. A reminder before we start today's video that if you're shopping for any of these cards, use my TCG Player affiliate link found in the description of this video. Now let's dive into the number 10 card this week, coming to us from Urza Saga. That's right, this is Sarah's Sanctum. Now this of course is on the Game Changers list, but that didn't stop a lot of people from buying this card as it jumps into the number 10 spot with 50 sales or $15,900 of total sales action. Now this card is averaging $319.95 a copy, and as you can see, this card has been trending upward in terms of sale volume and the monthly change in its price. Players are starting to recognize that this kind of card is just undervalued right now, and it's probably going to make a big comeback in the years to come. Now, when we're looking at Sarah's Sanctum as an actual card, and one of my favorites, as you guys know, when we take a look at Sarah's Sanctum being a legendary land is one thing, but at the same time, this thing is unlike cards that are banned like Tolarian Academy. This thing still goes into play saying you get one white mana in your mana pool for each enchantment you control. There's a lot of enchantments nowadays, making this card a lot more powerful than a lot of players realize. Now let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at the number 9 card this week, and you might be surprised to see it's Tundra. I know I was. Tundra has the number 9 spot. This thing has 52 sales this week, at a total cost of $24,335 of total sales action. This card averages $467.99, and this card is off of its highs, but it's not far off. A lot of players have started to notice that many of the dual lands are starting to recover. It may be slow, it may be incremental, but these cards are all definitely heading to an upward trajectory, and that means we have to pay attention to what's going on inside the reserve list a lot more than players have been in the past. It looks like a lot of these cards are starting to get a little more attention and recognizing their playability. Well, let's just face it, cards are expensive right now, and players find a lot more value in some of these older cards as opposed to buying a new high-priced card. These ones are never coming back. It's the way it is. Now, our number 8 card this week is Copy Artifact from Revised Edition. Now, this is one of those cards you should probably own at least one. I usually say at least own 4. It had 55 sales this week, or $4,403 of total sales action. Really respectable numbers. This is like week 3 or 4. This card's been on a total rebound the last few weeks, and it's just, again, commander players, total playability. This thing's going to be in a lot of decks. It's going to continue to be in a lot of decks, and as players don't like kind of shuffling cards in and out, well, that just means that people buy multiple copies. This card has surged up $30.08 this month. This is a massive shift in the overall price of this card, considering just over a month ago, this card was $30 if you wanted to buy a near mint copy. Now you're not going to get a heavily played copy for probably less than $50. So keep this kind of thing in mind. These cards do have a life cycle. It will go back down again. There's lots of copies out there. It is not going to stay at this high of a price, but you might want to pay attention to it. Look for a near mint copy in the next year and pick it up when the price kind of goes dipping down again. Now, our next card this week, this is coming to us from Alliances, and this is Lake of the Dead. It hasn't been on the list for about a month or two. It takes the number 7 spot this week with 61 sales, or $5,371.66 of total sales action. Now, cards from Alliances are often underrated just because there was a lot of these things printed, but there's also still sealed boxes available. A lot of players don't associate heavy value with this set, but there are many cards inside that have continued to trend upwards, and this one may not be having a major price shift, but we know it's been above the $300 mark back in 2021. And when we look at this card's playability in Tron decks, as well as things like Eldrazi creations, this is a card that should not be underestimated in the long-term health of what you might be trying to build your collection up to. So owning at least one, even if it's a heavily played copy, just so you don't have to buy one later and have a FOMO event and overpay, means just look in the market, find a cheaper copy, and get it when the getting's good. It's an amazing card. Now, our next card this week is Mind Over Matter from Exodus. This, again, is another card that's seeing a little bit more play right now and a lot more interest. 63 sales this week, or $2,800 of total sales action, means cards like this that have infinite combo loops do come around kind of again like it gets boring, it gets hot, it gets boring, it gets hot. And right now this card is going up a little bit. I mean, it was $44.45 per copy for near mint. You can see these copies for $35 to $38 for moderately played. It has a monthly change of $4.45, which is pretty respectable considering that's about a 10% price change in this card. Now, 4 blue and 2 other to cast this beast, and it has some iconic artwork. The artwork on this thing is awesome. You're seeing Urza standing there. Now it says choose and discard a card, tap or untap, target artifact, creature, or land. Well, there's lots of infinite loops. I don't need to mention them all in today's video, but this is one of those cards I do say own one copy. After you have one, you never have to worry. Now, our next card this week is where things get a little bit weird. We've had a lot of spoilers for Tarkir Dragonstorm, and that means the interest in dragons is kind of jumping back up, and that's why Zirlin of the Claw jumps into the number 5 position with 71 sales, or $1,007.49 of total sales action. Interesting is that most of the copies sold were near mint on this card, okay? They're not buying heavily played copies. There were a couple, but it's mostly near mint just because the card is so cheap right now. I think the all-time high for this card was like $50. It's only gone up by 64 cents this month, but you can expect that to change as more players start looking into or want to build with more Dragon Commander decks. Now, Zirlin is a 5 casting cost legendary, and it's one of those Vishino guys, right? And it says summon legend, of course. Now, it does say search your library for a dragon and put it directly into play as though it were just summoned. Shuffle your library afterwards, and of course, the creature doesn't have summoning sickness, then you remove it from the game. All for 2 red and 1 other. This can be a brutal game effect when you don't see it coming, so pay attention. Now, the next one, of course, kind of goes hand in hand. Here is Hivvis of the Scale. This card is $5.30. It's been as high as around $20. It takes the number 4 spot with 75 sales this week, which means $397.50. This thing is really dirt cheap right now, and it's been, again, as high as $25. So where are we going? Actually, I think it was $20. I apologize. I think it's 20. I'm not looking at the screen right now. Now, when I look at this card around that $20 level and we see where it's going to go, you'll see right now we've talked about this card in the last few months and it hasn't had a major price change yet. But as often happens, whenever we see a new release, we see new interest. That new interest, especially with speculators thinking there might be something coming along, it can make you want to buy this card. Now, Hivvis of the Scale is a 5 casting cost, just like Zirlin. But this one's a little bit more different because it affects your opponents, right? You can choose to not untap Hivvis of the Scale during your untap phase, gain control of target dragon if Hivvis of the Scale becomes untapped, or if you lose control of Hivvis of the Scale, lose control of that dragon. Okay, so this is going to help you against your opponents. It's not going to be used in that many decks, but it's something to keep in mind. Now, our next one is kind of like one of those friendly buyouts where players are just like, I want to buy this card for the sake of owning it. So we have Misfortune taking the number 3 position, and that has 92 sales, and of course that's $92 because, as you can see, it's a dollar card. It isn't one of those hot ones that's worth $50. So what do we get for Misfortune? A card like this has only been as high as $4. It is never going to be the be-all, end-all of cards. It did go up 17 cents this month, and that's kind of cool. It rose 17 cents. I mean, that's awesome. It had a 17% increase in price, I guess, is the way of looking at it. But when we actually take a closer look at this card, we have to say to ourselves, where is it going? Well, Misfortune, of course, is a 4 casting cost. We've got 1 black, 1 red, 1 green, 1 other. The artwork is kind of fun. I do like the idea of your misfortune happening. It's a sorcery from Alliances. Target opponent chooses 1. You put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and gain 4 life, or you put a -1/-1 counter on each creature that opponent controls, and Misfortune deals 4 damage. Not that bad when you use it in the right deck. Now, our next card. We're diving back into Unfulfilled Desires. This thing is still pretty hot, and there's a lot of players buying it. It comes in with 98 sales this week to take the number 2 position, which is $2,449 of total sales action. I actually expected this card to kind of be knocked off the list this week, or at least be around the number 9, number 10 position. But a late surge of sales later this week of moderately played copies really pushed this thing over the top right now. When we take a closer look at this card and see where it's going, it isn't trending down as as fast as I thought it would, and it's kind of leveling out. It still has a monthly change of $22.41 in the positive, so this card's definitely not going back down to $5 anytime soon. It looks like the new floor price, that floor price is going to be somewhere around the $10 mark, so keep it in mind. Now, Unfulfilled Desires being one black, one blue, and one other as an enchantment card means that this thing has a nice effect. You can pay 1 life, draw a card, and then choose and discard a card. Well, there's lots of reasons to discard, but ever since Aether Drift, we had a lot of surge of this card, and that's going to continue as long as players are still building this deck. So keep in mind that this card took the number 2 spot, but it's not number 1. So if you want to see what number 1 is, well, let's get that little party started. Number 1 this week is Replenish from Urza's Destiny. It had a late buyout this week on Thursday, and that pushed way above what I thought it was going to go. 107 sales, or $11,505 of total sales action. Many of the copies moving are heavily played to moderately played, with a few nice and light played and a few of the near mint copies, but mostly of the heavily to moderately played copies. Now, at $107.53, this thing has really gone up in price in the last month, and that's something to take note of, because I did mention this card when it was around $35 just over a month ago, that this is a card a lot of players should probably pick up while it's cheap because of its ability to be splashed into a lot of different decks. So right now we see this monthly change at around $17.38 of an overall monthly change. This is a real difference from what we saw the month before and the month before that, but this continued interest in this card, this one and Academy Rector having the buyouts last month as well, means there's a little more pressure on the card, and that means the supply is just kind of a buyer's market right now, turning into a seller's market where they're getting to charge more money. So the 1 white and 3 other means it gets splashed all over, but it does say return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to play. That includes creatures and stuff now. There's all kinds of crazy cards that make this thing work a lot better than it should in today's Magic the Gathering world, so don't sleep on cards like this, pay attention. Now let's talk about what's going on. The reserve list is a very interesting place right now. When you have new boxed products like Final Fantasy costing $800 a box with taxes, you have players who are going to discuss this and say, do I want to buy that box? Or do I want to buy 2 dual lands? Do I want to buy a Tolarian Academy, a Serra's Sanctum? Or do I want to buy even a Gaia's Cradle for the price of that 1 Final Fantasy collector box? This is where a lot of players are going to say, I'm going to skip some of these newer products to buy some of these older reserve list cards, which I know are great cards, and they're going to fit into multiple decks. I think that is why we're starting to see many interesting price points on some of these reserve list cards start to shift, like Replenish, like Academy Rector. Even cards like Serra's Sanctum are slowly going upwards, as well as many dual lands. Now, I'm not saying these are FOMO events, but when you see a lot of good reserve list cards starting to move and the price is just slowly upticking, nothing crazy, no buyouts in the sense of 10,000 copies leaving the market, not that there are that many available anyway, but we are seeing that slight but subtle price shifting of many of these cards. It's something to be aware of, it's something to pay attention to, and no, there is no indicator that tells me that these prices are going to hold at those levels. There's no suppression of market stock that it means it won't go back down. There's just no reason for new stock to come to market to lower the price, which inevitably happens if prices go too high. So if Serra's Sanctum all of a sudden hits $500, $600, $700 per copy of Serra's Sanctum, being a game changer card, you might see new players say, you know what, I'm willing to take a bet on that one, put my copies up for sale and cash out, and hopefully catch it a year from now or 2 years from now when it gets cheaper, if it gets cheaper. That is going to be a debate that players will have among themselves about how they decide to engage with their cards, whether they are going to keep them long term or keep them as a short term spin-off and try to cash in some equity. It's a great thing to have around. Either way, the market's a little more interesting than I expected for this time of year, and we are definitely seeing positive turns in some of these reserve list market cards, as well as a lot of stores aren't keeping big heavy stocks, and I've noticed buy lists for many stores are actually starting to uptick a bit for certain cards. Certain reserve list cards, things like Tropical Island, Volcanic, which I know copies sold this week, just not enough to make the top 10. Either way, I want to thank you all for hanging out with me today on the video. Drop some comments in the comment section if you enjoyed today's content. I hope you remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I do put out new content every single day. Have yourselves a great day in the world of Magic the Gathering. If you guys are at the Magic Con, I hope you had a blast. If you're just trying out and seeing all these amazing spoilers of all the new sets, drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys on my live stream tonight on Sunday, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Have a great one. I'll see you then. Hey guys, a big shout out and thank you to all my amazing patrons out there supporting my channel each and every day, as well as my YouTube membership members. And of course, we can't forget the regular viewers who give my videos a thumbs up and leave a nice comment every day talking into the world of Magic the Gathering. We're in a crazy place right now. It's a great epic story, and I'm lucky enough to be here every day to talk to you guys about it. So thanks again, and of course, I will see you all tomorrow with another video. Welcome back to the Ramble Jamble. You're here with MTG Mox, man. You made it this far? You got past the door, man? Wow. You must have tipped him off, huh? It's all right. I don't mind. I'm glad you're hanging out here. You made it to the end. Respect. I'm really surprised by the level of interest right now in reserve list cards, because I'm not hearing chatter from the store level other than to say we have a wish list and people are looking for cards, but nobody's turning anything in. It's interesting to see how many of these cards are probably being held in private collections right now. And the fact that stores, when they depleted their reserves of reserve list cards, like everything they had in stock kind of left, they haven't been able to restock as easily as in the past. And because there's no major upturn of interest in the overall market news about reserve list, we're not seeing or hearing a lot about this, but the sales kind of stand as they are. There's a lot of mid-tier reserve list cards that have a lot of playability that are moving in the market right now, and a lot of fun cards like Misfortune that are still having buyouts. You know, if I was a bet man, I wonder how many copies in the next few weeks will sell of cards like Lodestone Bauble, 0 casting cost artifacts, Delph's Cone, stuff like that, just because of what people may be building when they look of, you know, Mox Opal with Mox Jasper. All those little things cause these triggering events, and they see a cheap card, some people speculate on them and start buying them up. It's not something I recommend right now. These cards don't warrant that kind of attention, but it is one of those things you're like, yeah, I've seen this cycle enough times to see what people are going to do. Interesting stuff. Anyway. To close things out here, at the end of the ramble and the jamble, I gotta be honest, the fact I'm not seeing any heavy power cards move doesn't surprise me, but the number of mid-tier, the cards like Time Spiral, the cards like Academy Rector, Replenish, these cards moving in the volumes we're seeing gives me kind of hope. Hope that people recognize a good deal and they're taking advantage of it before anything gets out of hand. Better to cash in now and get some good cheap cards than have to pay at the top level if things go a little, upside down world. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Thanks for hanging out. See you soon.